Sure. Please welcome into the show, Mike Lee. Mike, thanks for coming all the way to us from nice, warm Florida, I'm sure, Sarasota. All right, brother. We hear more about the border, we hear more about crime, but we don't hear a lot about debt. And it's probably a bigger issue than both of those, but it just doesn't come to maybe because people don't understand it. I don't know. But I think it's massive, and there's a debt bomb coming, if you ask me. What do you say?
Well, in fixed income, and I'm sure you know your bond math, you talk about convexity.
Yes.
And convexity is like you look at a chart and there's a straight line across. Okay. Convexity is when it, curves up hard or curves down. And so bonds have negative convexity. So when things get bad, they get worse really bad. So you just flip that upside down with our debt. And now here we are, right? Like once we've kind of crossed the Rubicon in terms of debt and how much there is a couple $1 trillion ago. And the debt deal that Kevin McCarthy signed, which gave them unlimited debt until January 2025, was quite possibly the worst thing that a legislature has ever done in the history of America, right? Because now it is on. And the debt interest is going to see $1 trillion this year. And as treasuries come due, they're getting refinanced at much higher rates. And why are they at higher rates? Well, the government spent way too much money during COVID. Okay. That caused inflation. And because of inflation, interest rates went higher. And because interest rates are higher, the government is spending more money, which means inflation is going to remain elevated, which means interest rates can't come back down. There is zero fiscal responsibility. There is zero fiscal sanity. And what's even worse is the CBO says all these things are going to happen. Like if the CBO was a dart player, you would not want to be in the same room as them because they're so inaccurate. They are forecasting. So last year they thought we were going to have about $5 trillion in tax revenue. It came in at 4.5 trillion. We're tracking down 8% year over year, and somehow they believe all this tax revenue is going to pick up. They believe that the enforcement at the IRS, the additional agents, is going to pick up $500 billion annually in tax revenue. And I can just tell you that's insane. I don't know about you, but like I deal with hundreds of people every year getting ready for their taxes. Okay. They bend over backwards to like cross every T and dot every I. And I assure you, 99% of people are doing everything they possibly can to follow every letter of the law. And this enforcement, I'm sure it'll help somewhat, but it's not going to pick up $500 billion. So the deficit is likely to be well in excess of $2 trillion again. Biden's just out there forgiving how many billions of dollars in student loan. It is just insane. And I had a meeting with I went to an event with my Congressman, Greg Steube, who's fantastic, but even he doesn't have his arms around how severe this debt problem is and how quickly it gets worse and worse and worse. And like you've seen this, and we haven't seen it because of all the zombie companies out there, but prior to 2008, when we didn't bail out everything, you could see this with high yield companies and them going down this debt spiral, this debt bomb, raising equity to service their debt. Like that's the sort of situation the U.S. is in right now.
Right. And so, I mean, it's not only just a financial issue, it's also a moral or ethical issue. I think that's a bad, and like you said, we don't have the money. We shouldn't be spending the night, staying up all night to trying to decide where we're going to spend $100 billion that we don't have. We just simply don't have it. We can't excuse student loan debt because we just don't have it. But we continue to do that. So my question is, morally, I mean, how does this stop? Like you said, I'm sure your congressman's a good guy, but they don't even understand the seriousness and how quickly it's like going bankrupt, right? At first it's slow, but then all of a sudden it happens all at once. That's the same thing with this debt bomb.
And like we're right in that acceleration part of the curve right now, where you're going to be looking at like $38-39 trillion worth of debt come the spring of next year, unless they shut down the government. And half the Republican, like literally just a little less than half the Republican caucus is afraid to shut down, afraid to cut any sort of spending. Right. And he said, if they don't pass a budget by June 1st, there's a 1% reduction in non-defense discretionary spending. Well, that's like $60 or $70 billion. Right. It's less than they want to give to Ukraine right now. It's a joke. Like no one has any idea. The problem is like it all kind of goes back to COVID. And so these COVID stimulus bills. OK, so Trump was responsible for one, but the second and the third, wholly unnecessary. Okay, were did no, like, I'm sure it helps some people, but like you've been saying, for every dollar of GDP growth, it's taking us $2.50 of debt.
Yes.
Like
New debt. Yeah, new debt. Yeah.
I didn't get 800 on the math SAT, but I was close, and I can tell you that's a bad number.
Right. It's horrible. I mean, you're not getting your bang. You're getting 40% of your bang for your buck. I mean, that's not going to work for me ever at all. And that's the problem that we sit here with. And again, I think you're right when I say that, you say that it's just hard for them to get their mind around it. And, playing with $60 to $70 billion in that 1% you're talking about, you know what we would call that in my household? That's a suitcase on the Queen Mary. Thanks. It does nothing for me. So I appreciate you coming on, Mike Lee. That was awesome. I just want everybody out there to know how serious this is going to be.